Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Rakshamam Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam Krishna 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 Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna Krishna Hey Krishna 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 Rakshamam Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rakshamam Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahimam Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Shri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Dvaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Okay. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila Chapter 9, text 361 and 362. So this is kind of like the concluding portion of Lord Chaitanya's travels to the holy places. Very wonderful section of this Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya takes the part of the ordinary sadhu or sannyasi who's traveling to the sacred places. But in his travels, he was benedicting others to such an amazing extent. Wherever he went, he exhibited his love of God. So when he went to the temples, people were benefited in ways they had never expected. And so it was a very merciful kind of journey where Lord Chaitanya, who is God himself, was giving benediction to everyone he met. It's probably a little hard to conceive of what the presence of Lord Chaitanya must have been like. Very profound effect it had on people. They would, their hearts would alter, their minds would alter, and they would immediately begin chanting the holy name. So in this first verse, 361, Kaviraj Goswami says, Chaitanya Charita Shuna Shraddha Bhakti Kari Matsarya Chadhiya Mukhe Bhala Hari Hari. Please hear the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with faith and devotion. Giving up envy of the Lord, everyone chant the Lord's holy name, Hari. So this is a nice verse. Actually, I was feeling it this morning about just being honest. You know, sometimes I come to the temple and I'm not feeling much of anything. Just basically kind of feeling a bit rotten about where I'm at. But somehow, when you chant the holy name, if you can chant even once sincerely, then you can give up your envious nature and actually feel some real happiness and feel that you're receiving mercy. You know, when you feel that you're receiving the mercy of the Lord, that's very inspiring. It's very, it makes you realize you may be a rotten, fallen person, but at the same time, Lord Chaitanya is always going to be shedding his mercy if you're open to it. Anyway, now the verse that is on the board, I think, is 362. So we'll chant that. E kali kale ar nahi kono dharm, e kali kale ar nahi kono dharm, Vaishnava Vaishnava Shastra ekahi marm, Shastra ekahi marm, e kali kale ar nahi kono dharm, kale ar nahi kono dharm, Vaishnava Vaishnava Shastra ekahi marm, Ekali Kale, let me start again. Ekali Kale ar nahi kono dharm, Vaishnava Vaishnava Shastra ekahi marm, Ekali kale ar nahi kono dharm, Vaishnava Vaishnava Shastra ekahi marm, Ekali kale ar nahi kono dharm, Vaishnava Vaishnava Shastra ekahi marm, Vaishnavis. Ekali kale ar nahi kono dharm, Vaishnava Vaishnava Shastra ekahi marm, Ekali kale ar nahi kono dharm, Vaishnava Vaishnava Shastra ekahi marm. Okay. Ekali Kale. In this age of Kali, are other nahi kona, there is not any dharma, religious principle, Vaishnava, devotee, Vaishnava Shastra, devotional literature, ekahi marm. This is the purport. Translation: in this age of Kali, there are no genuine religious principles. There are only the Vaishnava devotees and the Vaishnava devotional scriptures. This is the sum and substance of everything. Purport. It's quite a dramatic statement, if you think about it. I mean, many other religionists will object strongly to such statements. to say that there's nothing but Vaishnavas in the Vaishnava Shastra. What? But here's the purport. One must have firm faith in the process of devotional service and the scriptures that support it. If one hears the activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with faith, he can be freed from his envious position. Now, right away, someone may raise a challenge here that, what do you mean? I'm not envious. It'd be interesting to hear how you would answer it. But how would you answer? Someone says, I'm not envious. No? You wouldn't be able to answer that? Oh, this is, by the way, this is meant to be interactive. So someone, how would you defend this? Do we have another microphone? Yeah.
Is it because we come to this material world because we're envious of Krishna?
That's a good start. I mean, it's not a good start. It's a terrible start. Not what you said, but coming to the world because we're envious of Krishna is not a good start. Yes. Anybody want to add anything to that? Were we envious of Krishna? Someone might say in response, what do you mean? I don't even know. I don't know anything about God. I'm certainly not envious of God. Yes?
Yes.
Here we go.
I mean, whenever I try to enjoy something, then actually I'm envious of Krishna, because everything is Krishna's property, everything belongs to him. I mean, maybe you cannot talk to a person like this, but I'm just thinking through, what are my thoughts here. So, and in this way, actually, maybe even as a devotee, I'm still envy, and not a devotee, even aspiring devotee. So whenever I want, when I have some sense enjoyment, that is actually showing also my envy to Krishna, because I take his position of being the real enjoyer, the real proprietor, the real maintainer and everything.
Now we're developing some philosophical grounding. So, but then I'm playing the atheist or agnostic. I might say, well, isn't Krishna, if Krishna is God, I believe you said that earlier, so if he's God, why would he not be okay with me enjoying his property? He's got everything already, so why should I be classified as envious because I want to enjoy God's properties? He doesn't mind. He wouldn't mind, would he? No? Yes? Speaker? You're going to be broadcast to the world now.
Because I think I'm God, I should be enjoying, I should be, as Prabhupada uses this term, I'm the Lord and Master of all that I serve. So who's Krishna?
Who's this Krishna?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you say that he's God, but then if he is God, so my argument was, isn't he God generous? Are you saying God's not generous? He becomes upset if we're enjoying his property?
No, it's not about him getting upset. It's about me getting upset by recognizing someone else as God.
Now we're getting to the root of it. In other words, the envy is that I'm not him. And I'm the important person. I'm the enjoyer. I'm enjoying, and that's what matters, that I'm enjoying. Actually, people will come right out and say that. If you often will find, they'll actually say, it's all about my happiness, my pleasure. That's the goal of life, that I should enjoy. I be the enjoyer rather than a humble position. Be a servant. Servants aren't treated well. Why would I want to become a servant? See, so there is this latent resentment. Even though we may not recognize it as such, one makes themselves the center of everything. So anyway, I'm just trying to get into the verse a little bit here. It says that in the purport here, Prabhupada's saying one can be freed from his envious position if you hear the activities of Lord Chaitanya with faith. Now, anyone can hear the activities of Lord Chaitanya, but they may not accept that well, so what? They may not have any feeling about the activities of Lord Chaitanya. But if you actually study the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in this wonderful book, you actually begin to feel affection and attachment and pleasure in hearing about these things. So that envy in the heart is worn away by this process, hearing. So important. In this age, a person should not envy Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, but should chant the holy names of Hari and Krishna, the Maha Mantra. That is the sum and substance of eternal religion known as Sanatana Dharma. The real Vaishnava is a pure devotee and fully realized soul, and a Vaishnava Shastra refers to Shruti, or the Vedas, which are called Shabda Praman, the evidence of transcendental sound. Now, actually, in this purport, we're going to discover that the theme is about evidence. What is evidence? What is not evidence? But here it's stated, this is the process, Lord Chaitanya's movement, chanting this Maha Mantra, in that way, constantly glorifying, praising the source of all of our existence, Krishna, Lord Chaitanya. These are the original Supreme Personalities of Godhead, different manifestations of Godhead. And so, really, the sum and substance of all religion, eternal religion, is to glorify God. So we follow the pure Vaishnava in this, in disciplic succession. Well, pure Vaishnava is instructing how to perform this scientific process of God realization. It says here, the real Vaishnava. Now, that raises a question. So is there a fake Vaishnava? Anybody? Yeah, there are. Well, what do you mean, yes? He's nodding his head that there's such a thing as a fake Vaishnava. I want to know more about this. Where's that speaker? I mean, that microphone, yeah. We're going to hear somebody explain what a fake Vaishnava is.
I meant, even I claim to be Vaishnava, but I'm not. So I'm a pretender. So the world is full of pretenders who pretend to be what they are not. So even, especially you come across people when you visit holy dhams who proclaim to be Vaishnavas, but when you look at their conduct, it's...
Their what?
When you look at their conduct.
Conduct.
Far from being, Vaishnava qualities.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the reason Prabhupada is using the word real.
Well, I think even more, he says, the real Vaishnava is a pure devotee and fully realized soul. That's pretty high qualifications. So when you say that someone's a fully realized soul, a pure devotee, a real Vaishnava, really that means niskinchana. Means no material desire at all. So when we loosely call each other Vaishnavas or Vaishnavis, it's a very high compliment, but it may not be accurate. I mean, Lord Chaitanya was niskinchana, Rupa Goswami was niskinchana, and we believe that Prabhupada was niskinchana. But to say that one is a real Vaishnava or a pure realized soul, that's a very tall order. Not an easy thing. Because real Vaishnava, according to Shastra, is niskinchana. And so they have no material desires. As long as we have material desire, we have to work at our craft. We have to, up to nanarjana vritti, to come to that stage of realization of anarjana vritti, means that there are no more anarthas, no more obstacles in the heart. That's where all the hard work is in Krishna consciousness. In all of our Krishna conscious activities, it's to come to this platform where nivritti, it's finished. All these anarthas, all these unwanted things in the heart, obstacles, envy, lust, anger, so many things are there. A desire for profit, adoration, distinction. I mean, adoration and distinction is so pleasing, isn't it? You know, it's just like whenever I come to the temple, people, oh, you're an older disciple of Prabhupada. Yeah. But it's just, I mean, and I appreciate it in one sense that, oh, I'm being recognized. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, don't listen. You know what you are. You know where you're at. You know where you're situated and how fallen you actually are. So it's actually kind of, it's a kind of disturbance, but meant well, and it is the etiquette. So you can't really fight it. You have to sort of accept it with a big dose of salt, you know, and try not to become overwhelmed by such desires for adoration and distinction. So here we're talking about real Vaishnavas that don't feel those things. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Real Vaishnava is always like paradukh dukhi. Is always
You want to define paraparadukhi? Some people listening may not know.
Yeah. I mean, they always he's always unhappy when he sees somebody unhappy. So that's a humble attitude from inside. So that's a
characteristic. Thank you. Exactly. But, you know, some of us are not on that platform. I mean, hopefully we're developing that platform, or we're developing that consciousness. But we have to be real. We have to be realistic about where we are. I always like to say this because, I don't know, it's just a habit. You'll excuse me. But, you know, you can only make advancement from where you are, not where you imagine yourself to be. You know, you have to be realistic and honest about where you are in order to make progress to a higher position or a better position. So, you know, sometimes people say, oh, just fake it until you make it. But actually, it's better not to fake anything. Just try to be realistic and be honest. So honesty is important. Anyway, now he's defining, we've defined a little bit about a pure Vaishnava, and on the other hand, now we have about the Shruti, or the Shastra, which is sometimes called Shabda Praman. Now, Praman means evidence. What's the evidence? You know, people are very fond of evidence. If you make any claim, they want to know, well, what's the evidence? Like even financial companies, you know, you want to invest your money, let's see what the track record of it used to be very popular, these mutual funds. And if they would say, just see our track record. And you go back like 15, 20 years, and they've always been successful in making money. So you think, okay, that's evidence. There's some evidence that they're gonna, you know, make me rich. So evidence, when we make claims, we have to be able to supply some evidence. Now we know the best evidence is, in our line, we consider the best evidence to be Shastra. But there are other kinds of evidence. So here, but what is recommended here, especially, is Shabda Praman, the evidence of transcendental sound. Now, what is transcendental sound? Yeah? Well, we can say that it's the Maha Mantra, but how do you know it's transcendental? Okay, let's start again now.
Hare Krishna. We have to experience by chanting.
So you're saying that by the experience that you have personally while chanting, how will we know that that experience isn't just some kind of hallucinatory experience? Some kind of, emotion, some sentiment, or some...
Like chant and be happy.
Well, if you're happy, that's a good sign, but sometimes people are happy by chanting at rock and roll concerts or something like that. They claim to be happy. They appear to be happy.
But it won't last long, isn't it, Prabhu? Whatever they do.
Okay. Okay, we have an answer in the back here, or an answer, or we know what we're going to get with Chaitanya Jivan.
Well, I think just speaking, we only know that it's transcendental because it's by authority, Shabda. So we're going by acharyas.
Yeah, but let's say you're trying to convince somebody else, and they don't necessarily recognize Shabda as evidence.
Oh, then I'm just saying, well, I can't prove, personally I would be saying, I can't prove it. It's just an experiment, and you'll only discover what you discover by taking part, and take it at the pace that you feel comfortable with.
Yes.
You're willing to discover.
So we would say that's what you said was all right, by the way. It's experiential. If someone says you'll become, happy, that you'll become free from material desire gradually through this chanting, and you experience it, then you develop some faith based on the evidence of your own experience, which is a legitimate way to proceed. You have your experience, which is in line with the Guru, the Shastra, with the Sadhu, then you have some faith, some Shraddha develops. So here, now to continue, I'm never going to get through this purport at this rate. So it says here, if one strictly follows the Vedic literature and chants the holy name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he will actually be situated in the transcendental disciplic succession. So this is encouraging words from Prabhupada. Those who want to attain life's ultimate goal must follow this principle. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 19th chapter, 17th verse, it is said, Shruti prayaksham aiti... I'm not sure, I never know how to... Anybody a Sanskritist? Aityam, I think it is. Anumanam chatushtavam pramanesh vanavashtanad vikalpatsa virajate. So now there's 4 kinds of evidence that are recognized in Vedic circles. Vedic literature, direct perception, history, and hypothesis. These are different kinds of evidence. Now, Prabhupada writes here, Vedic literature, direct perception, history, and hypothesis are the 4 kinds of evidential proofs. Everyone should stick to these principles for the realization of the absolute truth. Interestingly enough, Prabhupada doesn't give a purport to this verse, but there is a purport in the 11th canto, so I want to present some things here. This verse is analyzed in this way. First of all, this is in the word for word. It says Shruti, Vedic knowledge. Now, when we have Prabhupada's translation of this verse, and we have the translation that's given in the 11th canto that was done by Gopi Pranadhana and Sridhana Maharaj. Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare So, first of all, in Prabhupada's translation, he just says Shruti, Vedic literature, and in this it says Shruti, Vedic knowledge. Okay, basically the same thing. So that's one kind of evidence, Vedic knowledge, Shruti. or Shabda Praman. Then we have Pradyaksham, or Pradyaksha. Here in the Prabhupada's translation, direct perception. That means through the senses. Seeing is believing. So they say that's the second kind of evidence. If you see something, if you can perceive it with your senses, that's a kind of evidence. Now there are some problems with that kind of evidence. Can anybody identify for us what are the problems with pradyaksha? Okay, imperfect senses. Okay, can you remember all four?
Yeah, perfect senses, make mistakes, or your cheating propensity, and illusion.
Yeah. So the senses are, you could say, they're instrumental. I mean, it doesn't mean that if what's stated in the Vedas and what is stated by your sense perception is the same, then we can accept it. But if what's stated in the Vedas is different than what your senses perceive, then we have to assume it's the defect of the senses. At least that's the Vedic way of examining evidence. So we still will accept pradyaksha. Now the next one, aitiham, traditional wisdom. Now what does that mean? Here Prabhupada calls it history. Traditional wisdom, what do you think that means?
So different sadhus and sages and acharyas.
Yes, that's one kind of traditional history. What is stated in one place in Prabhupada's literature here, it says what is stated in the Puranas and what is stated by great saintly persons. That's history. In other words, if all the great sages have said something, just like in Bhagavad Gita when he cites all these different sages, doesn't he, when he said, all these great personalities have said this, now you yourself are saying it to me. So that would classify as aityam, traditional wisdom. And then here, Prabhupada calls it history, and Hridayananda Maharaj and Gopi Puranadana, isn't it? Gopi Jana Vallabha, who helped him translate the Bhagavatam. Gopi Purana, yes. He translates it as logical induction, which is quite an elevated term. Basically, it means it's the logic of the mind, of the brain, you could say. That you come up with a hypothesis, and then you give various kinds of statements which indicate your hypothesis may be true. So it's an hypothesis. It's maybe this is such and such, maybe this is that. So if someone's very intelligent, they sometimes are good at explaining things by hypothesis. So we've got four things. Vedic evidence, Vedic knowledge, we've got direct experience or direct perception, traditional wisdom or history, and hypothesis or logical induction here. So these are the four kinds of evidence that are recognized. This is the purport for this verse that we're citing here with these four kinds of evidence. Purport: in the Shruti or Vedic literature, it is clearly stated that everything emanates from the Absolute Truth, is maintained by the Absolute Truth, and at the end is conserved within the Absolute Truth. Similarly, by direct experience, we can observe the creation and destruction of great empires, cities, buildings, bodies, and so on. Everything, in other words, by direct experience, you can experience the temporary nature of everything. And we don't deny that is evidence. We see it. Everyone's dying, things are all melting away in the course of time. So we accept that. That's pratyaksha that we can easily accept. So, and then if we go around the world, and where there's traditional wisdom, and it will warn people, here's what it states, it will warn people that things in the world cannot last. Well, that's history. We know that's true. And then finally, by logical induction, we can easily conclude that nothing in the world is permanent. So material sense gratification, up to the highest possible living standard found on the heavenly planets, or down to the lowest conditions in the most repugnant precincts of hell, is always unsteady and prone to collapse at any moment. Well, that's called being realistic about the material world. Some people say pessimistic, but really it's realistic. One should therefore develop vairagya, detachment, as stated here, because in the verse it actually mentions detachment. So another meaning of this verse is that the four types of evidence cited here are often mutually contradictory in their description of the highest truth. In other words, your sense perception of something may be right or may be wrong. So if there's a conflict between your sense perception and the Shastra, you should let that conviction, about sense perception go. Now, people are very reluctant to do that. People don't want to admit that there could be something wrong with the way they see things. Even if you're extending your sense perception by various instrumentation, like microscopes or telescopes or whatever, it's still, you're expanding something that's defective to start with, that's subject to mistake, subject to illusion, subject to various defects. So here he says, one should therefore be detached from the duality of mundane evidence, including the portion of the Vedas even that deal with the material world, because it may vary. Instead, one should accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the actual authority. Both in Bhagavad Gita and here in Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is personally speaking, and thus there is no need to enter into the bewildering network of competing systems of mundane logic. So, Nyaya, when Lord Chaitanya took birth in Navadvip, Mayapur, the prominent philosophy was Nyaya, or logic. And they would all have all these incredible debates constantly trying to prove, whoever was the greatest logician would come up with a new theory. And there was all this debate going on. And here, the comment is, no need to enter into the bewildering network of competing systems of mundane logic. One can directly hear from the Absolute Truth himself. How is that possible? How can you hear from the Absolute Truth himself? Well, no, she raised her hand first. He was slow. No, he was too slow.
I was saying the same. So it's from Bhagavad Gita, yeah.
From
Bhagavad Gita.
Yes,
Krishna
Bhagavad
speaks
Gita,
himself.
Krishna is directly speaking, and in Srimad Bhagavatam, greatest realized sages are speaking of Krishna. And even the words uttered by Krishna are there in Srimad Bhagavatam as well. So, yes, and that way you can acquire perfect knowledge. One therefore becomes detached from inferior systems of knowledge, which cause one to hover on the mental platform. So it's true, these other systems, whether it's logic, whether it's sense perception, whether it's history, whether, speculation, these things don't get you anywhere, unfortunately. So again, I'm going to read something from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It mentions these four kinds of understanding again. One, direct understanding. They say pratyaksha. Pratyaksha, direct understanding, means the direct experience of your senses. Then, hypothetical understanding, anuman, theoretical. Historical understanding, aitya, there's history. It has a good track record of people saying, like man is mortal. Well, there's a lot of proof of that, isn't there? You may not have discovered yet that one person who's immortal, and of course, in ultimate sense, everyone's immortal, but the point is, physically, we're certainly not immortal. Much to our chagrin, much to our embarrassment, we get old and forgetful. I can hold up my hand to that. Very forgetful. Even the things you learned, you sometimes forget. So this is the nature. So historical understanding, and then understanding through sound, shabda. Of these four, understanding from the Vedic scriptures the sound representations of the absolute truth is the best method. Traditional Vedic students accept understanding through sound to be the best. So this is the summary study of Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Prabhupada, he teaches the Lord Chaitanya. And a scholarly friend of mine said these four kinds of evidence are listed in what he called the Taittiriya Aranyaka, which is part of the Krishna Yajurveda. So there's Vedic evidence that these are the four kinds of evidence that are accepted. So then really what follows in the rest of my notes here is just various statements which kind of confirm the things we've already discussed. I know this is a little technical, the different kinds of evidence and why we accept Shastra, but it's good to understand these things. It says, this is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami who makes this statement. Now, when it comes to evidence, we want to always, it's Shastra and Sadhu, and Guru and Sadhu. So great saintly persons and Shastra together. So great saintly persons always speaking according to Shastra. So when they speak, that's also a kind of evidence. So here it says, this is Krishnadas Kaviraj, he says, for evidence, please listen to the examples described in the revealed scriptures, which are corroborated by the realizations of great souls. So in other words, there's statements in the Shastra, and then these great self-realized souls say the same thing. So that's evidence. If you want evidence, again, this word for evidence, pramana. There's a lot of talk about pramana in Vedic circles, about what's evidence, what's accepted as evidence, what's not accepted as evidence. It gets a little very tricky sometimes to figure it all out. But here, he's saying these go for the examples that are there in the Vedic literature, and which are corroborated, by the realization of great souls. Then this is another one. This is also Kaviraj Goswami. Although there is other evidence, there's different kinds of evidence. In fact, in one place, I think it says, Jiva Goswami says there's 10 kinds of evidence. Prabhupada didn't list all of them, he listed just these 4 that we've discussed. But according to Jiva Goswami, they in some circles, they accept 10 different kinds of evidence. So trying to sort out all of that is sometimes a bit challenging. He says, although there is other evidence, the evidence given in the Vedic version must be taken as foremost. Vedic version understood directly are first-class evidence. And then in the purport, how much time do I have? Am I almost out of time? Or am I out of time? Quarter of? Okay. I'll try not to go past that. Well, he cites all the different places you can get the best explanations about evidence. He says, what should be consulted are Jiva Goswami's Tattva Sandarbha, Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan's commentary on that, and the following verses of the Brahma Sutra, Shastra Yonitvat, Tarka Pradishtanat, and, Shrutastu Shabda Mulatvat, that's also Vedanta Sutra, as commented upon by Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Madhvacharya, Sri Nimbarkacharya, and Srila Baladev Vidyabhushana. In other words, these are the persons you go to for understanding. I'll just read this part. Srila Jiva Goswami has noted that although there are 10 kinds of evidence, direct perception, the Vedic version, historical reference, hypothesis, and so on, and although they are generally accepted as evidence, the person presenting a hypothesis, reading the Vedic version, perceiving or interpreting by his experience is certain to be imperfect in 4 ways, which we identified earlier: committing mistakes, becoming illusioned, cheating, and having imperfect senses. So, although the evidence may be correct, the person himself is in danger of being misled due to his material defects. Apart from the direct presentation, there is a chance that an interpretation may not be perfect. Just like Bhagavad Gita as it is a way of trying to remove any obscuring of the message of Krishna. Whereas other Bhagavad Gitas are very speculative, interpretive. So direct presentation is emphasized by the Acharyas. That's evidence. And interpretation cannot be accepted as evidence, but he says it may be considered proof of evidence, means that there was some evidence behind your speculation. The evidence might be all right, but your speculation isn't. So these are some of the challenges to proving a point in Vedic circles. So Jiva Goswami has warned us, don't depend on interpretations. Depend on the verses as they are without interpretation. Then we have another few other things. Here's something by, again, Kaviraj Goswami and Chaitanya Charitamrita. When you remember when Sarvabhauma was expressing doubts to Gopinath Acharya that Lord Chaitanya, because Gopinath Acharya was claiming that Lord Chaitanya was God. And Sarvabhauma was a great scholar. I mean, a tremendous scholar. Sannyasis came to him for instruction. And so he was expressing his doubts. And so Gopinath Acharya at one point says, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sorry, I didn't read that correctly. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead only by his mercy, not by guesswork or hypothesis. So in other words, Sarvabhauma was trying to guess about things by hypothesis. And that's Anuman, his theories. And Gopinath Acharya said, if you get the mercy of God, then you'll understand. Otherwise, all your speculation is useless. So that was his way of... And Prabhupada concludes in the purport, one should understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead only through the evidence presented by the Shastras and the Mahajanas. In any case, one must have the mercy of the Lord in order to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by devotional service. So it's kind of a wonderful thing that unless one receives the mercy of God, he can't understand. Not really. So we are praying for that every day, hopefully. When we're chanting, we should be praying for that mercy so that we'll be able to enter into an understanding, actually develop some real attachment and love for the Supreme Lord. This is another statement coming from a lecture that Prabhupada gave on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, so therefore, Shruti Praman. There are 3 kinds of evidence. Sometimes they say 3, sometimes 4. But sometimes just 3 are mentioned. He says, out of that, Shruti Praman, evidence from higher authorities, that is the first-class evidence. What are those evidences? Pradyaksha, Aitiya, and Shruti. Pradyaksha means direct perception. Direct perception, that is evidence. People with poor fund of knowledge, they want direct perception of everything. This is Prabhupada speaking. And it's true. If you go out, when you're preaching out in the world, you go to people and talk. They want to see it. They don't want to just hear about it. They want to see it. They're insisting, show me. So they want direct perception of everything, Prabhupada said, but that is not possible. It's true. If you think about it, what about what's beyond this material universe? Where are you going to have direct perception of it? You don't have that kind of sensory reach. You don't have that capacity. So he's saying, but he says, but that is not possible. Direct perception of everything is not possible, which this is the truth. Therefore, aitya means historical, parampara hearing. Means that when we talk about history, evidence by history, that means parampara, the evidence of the great sages. This is acceptable evidence. And in this lecture from 1969, he says, Anuman, hypothesis, it may be like this, perhaps like this. Just like modern scientists say, perhaps it is like this. This is called Anuman, hypothesis. And another process is Shabda Praman. Shruti Praman. Shabda means sound vibration, and Shruti means oral reception. So out of the three processes, the Shabda Praman, or receiving vibration, sound vibration from authorities by oral reception, that is considered to be the perfect. Let's see now, almost at the end. There are 4 types of evidence, as we've discussed. Vedic evidence is accepted as foremost. This is also all from Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's various things cited by Madhvacharya. And then in the last part of the purport it says, whatever is stated within the Puranas, Mahabharata, and Ramayana is self-evident. There's no need for interpretation. The Bhagavad Gita is also within the Mahabharata. Therefore, all the statements of the Bhagavad Gita are self-evident. There is no need for interpretation. And if we do interpret, the entire authority of the Vedic literature is lost. So, this is from the Madhya Lila 6th chapter. I still have 5 minutes. So anyway, I think it's fairly clear. There's just one last thing I wanted to read, and then I'll open it up for questions that I probably won't be able to answer very well, but I'll try. This is from the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Prabhupada gives the history of Bhagavad Gita. So sometimes people say, I know there was an example, a disciple of Prabhupada, was saying that the Bhagavad Gita is 5,000 years old. Prabhupada became furious. Says, have you not studied my books? And the disciple was, they didn't know what to say. So here's what Prabhupada says in his books. He says, at the present moment, we have just passed through 5,000 plus years of the Kali Yuga, which lasts 432,000 years. Before this, there was Dwapara Yuga, 800,000 years. And before that, there was Treta Yuga, 1,200,000 years. Thus, some 2,005,000 years ago, Manu spoke the Bhagavad Gita to his disciple and son, Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this planet Earth. The age of the current Manu is calculated to last some 305,300,000 years, of which 120,400,000 have passed. Accepting that before the birth of Manu, the Gita was spoken by the Lord to his disciple, the sun god Vivaswan, a rough estimate is that the Gita was spoken at least 120,400,000 years ago. So, not just 5,000. 120,400,000 years. And in human society, it has been extant, means existed, for 2 million years. It was re-spoken by the Lord again to Arjuna about 5,000 years ago. That is the rough estimate. It's somehow it's sort of charming and delightful the way Prabhupada expresses himself. I mean, here he's saying, that is the rough estimate. You know, talking about millions and millions of years. That is the rough estimate. Kind of the way scholars like to speak, you know. Oh, that is the rough estimate of, you know. And so Prabhupada says, that is the rough estimate of the history of the Gita according to the Gita itself, and according to the version of the speaker, Lord Shri Krishna. It was spoken to the sun god Vivaswan because he is also a Kshatriya and is the father of all Kshatriyas who are descendants of the sun god or the Surya Vangsha Kshatriyas. Because Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Vedas, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this knowledge is aparusheya. Anybody know what that means? What does aparusheya mean? See, I think she's smarter than all of you.
No, I'm just a little bit of
Yes, come on.
Yeah, not man-made.
Yes, not man-made. That's a very, I like that. Yes, but it's aparusheya. Prabhupada translated as superhuman. It means beyond what a human can do, above and beyond a human understanding. So the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita is aparusheya. This is a great word. I wish I was a better Sanskrit, because I think the fact that there's an A in the front of this parusheya, I think it means not human. It's not human knowledge. This is superhuman. This is transcendental. We were talking about transcendental knowledge before. It's transcendental understanding. So I'm going to read that sentence again. Because Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Vedas, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this knowledge is aparusheya, superhuman. Now, people may believe it or not, but this is what our Acharya states. Since the Vedic instructions are accepted as they are without human interpretation, the Gita must therefore be accepted without mundane interpretation. So this is very definitive. There's so many scholars, as you know, Prabhupada didn't approve of a lot of these commentaries, like Radhakrishna's, who was the former president of India, or vice president, or whatever it was. President? President. He gave his own interpretation. He said these things should be accepted without mundane interpretation. The mundane wranglers may speculate on the Gita in their own ways, but that is not Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita has to be accepted as it is from the disciplic succession, and it is described herein that the Lord spoke to the sun god spoke to his son Manu, and Manu spoke to his son Ikshvaku. End of purport to chapter 4, verse 1, Bhagavad Gita. So, any questions or challenges? Well, maybe just questions would be better, but yes, over here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Guru. On the end of the day, you will never know, is that really true? There are many school of thoughts. They also convince completely in their knowledge, which contradicts or even in our Vedas. Vedas are full of knowledge that things are contradicted or things are differently explained. So, okay, Shabda is the greatest authority, but then who can say that this authority who gave you that Shabda may accept that knowledge the same, but if you go backwards more, maybe it's not as it is. So or in your heart you may know, if you practice, then you will know it's true or not. But so many different people accept different knowledge, which their hearts tells them is true, or there are different revelations also, either from higher entities. People accept, yes, heart tells me to, even without knowledge. So you will never really, of course, you have to accept some authority, but you'll never know actually, or not be able to convince somebody that this is actually truth, because there's so many information in this world, especially nowadays, that on the end creates atheists from people because there's
Yeah.
overload of information.
There must be a question in here
Yeah,
somewhere.
You know, so, and the question is, even with Shabda, how can you say that actually that's absolute truth?
How is it possible?
Yeah, even with that, because there's so many, even if you take Vedas, as I mentioned, there's so many information that...
Yeah. I understand the question. But I know the way Prabhupada dealt with similar questions. He said that any system that you follow, that you actually develop love for God, that's a perfect system. So if I follow whatever path you promote, and I develop love of God, then that's perfect. And now, Prabhupada's claim is that we give more information about God, where He is, what He does, what are His pastimes, what are His desires, what are His commands, you could say, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekang Sharanam Braja. We know more about it, and we say, here, take this process. Ultimately, it's about experience. Again, you have to practice it and see how you develop. Like, we used to give the example of a road map, and of course nowadays it's sat-nav, so... but if it says that you're going to reach a certain, when you're following a sat-nav, if it says in 3.5 miles you're going to reach such and such destination, and you do, and it continues to be accurate, then you develop faith. So whatever the process, he said, if you develop love of God, you know God as a person and you have love through that process, then it's a perfect process. And if in following that process you don't even get a hint along the way that it's true, then you won't continue with it. So I would say that really it comes down to what how you experience, and if you sincerely practice, you will get results. But if there's obstacles in the way of, as we know, there's Namaparad, coming even to the platform of Nambas is a struggle. So we have to sincerely practice if we want to experience the truth. Otherwise, people have to be satisfied with their own speculations, don't they? I mean, like, what is the typical agnostic speculation is, well, I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows. So I'm just going to go about go on my way and see what happens. A lot of people give up, you know what I'm saying? They give up they give up being truth seekers.
I think you hit the nail really with that. You hit the nail, actually, the experience, because if you may be satisfied with knowledge, as you said, but if you really don't experience that love, that's a proof. Actually, that's actually.
Why would you even continue if you don't have any evidence that it's working?
Yeah.
You won't continue,
Yeah,
ultimately. Well, a lot of people give up.
Yeah, I'm happy to ask you, so you kind of really hit the nail. So,
Oh, good,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad. Anything else? It's now 10 of, so I don't mind, but some people may have to. Now, this has to be
Yeah.
concise.
I was just going to ask, in line with the verse at the beginning, in line with the verse at the beginning, can you just repeat it again in English?
You mean the translation?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't. I have to find it. Wait a minute. Yeah, I will. Here we go. In this age of Kali, there are no genuine religious principles. There are only the Vaishnava devotees and Vaishnava devotional scriptures. This is the sum and substance of everything. Now, this is Prabhupada's translation. The translation in the 11th canto is, from the four types of evidence. Oh, what? How did I get that? Oh, sorry, of course. The verse that I mainly spoke about was this verse in the purport, which means Vedic literature, direct perception, history, and hypothesis are the four kinds of evidential proofs. So that's mainly what I spoke about. As far as the verse itself, you want me to explain these claims that are made in the verse, or?
No, I just wanted so that people heard it again, but you started out by saying, well, that's a bit of a statement to say that this is the only way and everything else. So how you asked the question, how would we answer it?
Yes.
I don't think it got then.
I see. Okay,
So-
no, that's legitimate. Thank you.
So my point was that are we to understand it like this? Because from our biased point of view, because we've all studied and understood, we can appreciate it. But you were saying if it, out in the wider public, if you, in Christianity it said Jesus, I am the truth, the way and the life, the only way.
Yeah, well, they say Jesus, and they would say Jesus in the Bible. Here we're saying Vaishnava devotees and Vaishnava devotional scriptures.
So my point was that when these statements are made like that, and when the teachers are making it, they're saying, well, look, there's no one else here in the desert. It's me you've got to come to because I am the teacher.
Mhm.
So they do make these statements like that to pull people. So from where they want to speak from and how they want to speak these messages.
Yeah, the point is that we cannot isolate this verse. It has to have context.
Yes.
Kaviraj Goswami has been speaking for hundreds and thousands of pages at this point.
Yes.
And everything that's come before has led up to this statement. So, in other words, we would have to go through that experience of reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita to recognize that he's concluding this based on all the evidence he's already given. So, based on everything he said prior to this particular verse, he concludes this way that genuine religious principles, there aren't any in this age, in this Kali Yuga, and he's established that already, and that there are only the Vaishnava devotees and Vaishnava devotional scriptures, saying that these are the ones that are going to help you. Other things are less substantial. So, I mean, and depending on your point of view, if you want to cite Christianity, for instance, as an example, we accept Christ as a Vaishnava who's preaching love of God according to the time, place, and circumstances he was in. So, in that sense, that's true too.
My point is say that teachers will say, according to the audience they're speaking to, they come out with
According to
statements
time,
like
place, and
that. So we will tend to
circumstances.
say, well, I say over here, and they say,
But
yes,
but my
there's a teacher speaking.
overarching point is that we have to have followed everything that he's presented prior to stating this. We would have to, and we obviously don't have time to do all that. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you all very much for sticking around, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Yeah, let me just get organized because I tend to be a little bit forgetful.